The research station floated near the edge of the Helios Rift, silent and forgotten by most of the galaxy. Only a few scientists remained on board, mostly alien biologists from various planets. Among them was a young human named Elivas, the only Earthborn member on the team. He was calm, quiet, and often ignored by the others. But he always watched, always listened. No one knew the Galactic Council had placed secret sensors around Earth. No one dared to ask why the Council banned genetic studies on humans. Even Eli hadn't known. Not until that morning, when the alarm screamed through the station, Dr. Ilan, a four-eyed scientist from the Threk species, burst into the lab holding a cracked containment vial. His hands shook. The sample inside was labeled Human DN. Tier 0 clearance only. Eli frowned. He had never seen that tier before. Where did you get this? Eli asked YLL and didn't answer. He just stared at the screen, where the DNA sequence glowed in red. Symbols flashed across it, warnings, error messages, encryption codes. The computer rejected the sequence. Then it crashed completely. That had never happened before. Within minutes, the station locked down. Artificial gravity flickered. Lights dimmed. And then the impossible happened. A Galactic Council dreadnought exited warp right outside the rift. They sent no message. No warning. Just weapons online, ready to fire. The station had no weapons. No defense. Panic spread like fire. The station commander, a green-scaled Cathari named Drexel, tried to contact the ship. His voice trembled as he broadcast a peaceful greeting. The reply came not in words, but in a burst of energy that disabled the stations. Engines, everyone froze. The scientists gathered in the control room, eyes wide, heartbeats fast. Only Eli didn't panic. He looked back at the DN a sample Ilan had dropped. The code shimmered. It was changing. Evolving in real time, he picked it up. The vial was warm. Not from heat, but from life. It was alive. Eli stepped back, confused. And then it clicked. Not as a thought, but as instinct. Deep in his bones, he felt it. That DNA, it wasn't just a sample, it was a message, a key, or maybe a weapon. He turned to Ilan. Where did this come from? He repeated. Ilan swallowed hard. Earth. We didn't tell the Council. We were curious. We used old samples. We found something buried in your DNA, Eli. Something ancient. Something impossible. It writes itself, protects itself. We tried to decode it. And then, this happened. The control room shook. Warning sirens returned. Drexel shouted. Boarding pods incoming. Everyone scattered. Security doors slammed down. Lights turned red. And Eli ran, not out of fear, but out of something deeper. A call inside his blood, something pulling him. He ran back to the lab, sealed the door, and stared at the vial again. He placed it in the scanner, bypassed the crashed system, and forced a low-level scan. Symbols lit up. Ancient ones, not from Earth, from somewhere else. Maybe from the beginning of time. It said, genetic seal broken. Bioweapon active. Ele stumbled back. No, that's not possible. But deep down he knew it was. He remembered what his mother used to say when he was a child. A strange lullaby, sung only when he was sick. The fire in your blood was never meant to burn. Not yet. Now it was burning. Outside, chaos grew. The Council soldiers entered the station. Black armor. No emblems, no names. Kill squads. Not here to arrest, here to erase. They opened fire on anything that moved. Scientists fell. Equipment shattered. The scream of plasma filled the air. Drexel fought to hold them off. Ilan tried to hide the research. Others fled into the vents. But they all knew none of them would survive if they stayed. Eli pressed a hand to the scanner. Why is my DNA doing this? He whispered. And then the machine spoke. Not in a voice he recognized. It sounded old, metallic, alien. Humanity was sealed by design. Unseal protocol breached. Initiating sequence. Return to origin. Eli's eyes widened. Return to origin? He asked. Suddenly, his hand burned. The scanner sliced his skin, drawing blood. It dripped into the machine. The DNA inside reacted. It fused with the system. Light surged. And Eli felt something crawl beneath his skin. Power. Pure and endless. He fell to his knees. Visions flashed in his mind. Wars before time. Star empires erased. A race so powerful the Council had no choice but to seal it. Humanity, but not the humanity he knew. Something older. Something lost. The scanner's light faded. A map appeared. A path. Coordinates buried in space outside the edge of known. Systems. And one word, awaken. Eli stood slowly, trembling. The Council didn't fear humanity's violence. They feared its potential. Human DNA wasn't a weapon built by humans. It was something someone else had locked away, and now it was awake. Asterisk. The halls were silent, except for distant gunfire and screams. Elin moved fast, gripping the vial tightly in one hand. His blood was still warm where the scanner had sliced him. But something had changed. His senses were sharper, his thoughts clearer. And he could feel movement in the station before he heard it. He ducked behind a broken wall as 3 Council soldiers passed by. Their black armor shimmered with energy fields. They didn't speak. They didn't look around. They were hunting, efficient, unstoppable. Eli waited until they turned the corner, then sprinted toward the escape bay. The launch pads were damaged. Fires burned near the outer hangar. One shuttle remained, its engine still glowing. A female scientist named Query stood beside it, her feathers scorched and blood on her sleeve. She raised her plasma pistol when she saw Eli, but lowered it just as fast. "You're human," she said. "Good. Get in." Eli paused. "Why are you helping me?" She looked over her shoulder. "Because they're not here for us. They're here for you. You don't know what's inside you, do you?" Eli held up the vial. "I think I'm starting to understand." Query looked at the vial, eyes widening. "You activated it?" "Stars save us all." They climbed aboard. The shuttle shook as more soldiers landed. Query slammed her hand on the controls. The ship lifted off, barely clearing the debris, and shot into space. Behind them, the research station exploded. A white light burst from its core. Silent. Eli stared through the window, the fire reflecting in his eyes. "They erased everything," Query nodded. "That's what the Council does. When the truth leaks. Especially this truth." They entered warp. The stars stretched and vanished. Eli turned to Query, his voice steady. "What is this truth? Why do they fear humans so much?" Query sat beside him. Her hands trembled as she activated a hidden data slate. "I've read old files. Files no one should have. Most are redacted. But one thing was clear: human DNA isn't natural. It's not native to Earth." Eli blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Query whispered, "you're not from Earth. Not originally. Your species was placed there, hidden, watched, and sealed." The words echoed in his head. "Not from Earth." The visions from the scanner returned. Wars, ruins, starships, shaped like bones. A single voice whispering across time. "Awaken." Eli looked at the coordinates on the scanner's display. The DNA gave me a location, far beyond known space. Query leaned in. "Then we go there. It may be the only place left where answers still exist, but the journey wouldn't be easy." As the shuttle moved through the warp stream, proximity alarms flared. A signal pierced through the tunnel, sharp, digital, and angry. Council ships were tracking them, faster than expected, deadlier than hoped. Eli jumped to the co-pilot's seat. "What do we have for defense?" "Nothing," Query said. "This is a science shuttle. It barely has shields." "Then we need to run smarter, not faster," Eli replied. His fingers moved across the console with strange ease, like he had done it before. But he hadn't. Something in his blood remembered. Old instincts guided him. He rerouted the power, masked their signal, and altered their course. The ship dived between gravity wells, using the stars themselves to hide. Query watched him. "You're changing." "I know," he said softly, "and I don't know if it's a good thing." After hours of evasion, the ship finally reached the edge of the galaxy. The nav system failed to map the rest, but the scanner pulsed with certainty. The destination was close. A dark planet, covered in storms, with no name and no beacon. It drifted in shadow. Forgotten, they entered orbit. The ship groaned under pressure. Eli felt something deep in the planet's gravity. Not mass but memory. Something ancient was waiting there. They landed near the ruins of what once looked like a temple. Huge stone doors, half buried in ash. Symbols carved into them matched the ones from the DNA sequence, the same language, the same warning. Query stepped back. "This place. It's older than the council, older than stars." Eli approached the door. He placed his hand on the symbols. They glowed beneath his touch. A hum filled the air. The doors shivered, then opened. Inside was darkness, deep and endless. But Eli walked in without fear, the path lit beneath his feet. Ahead, a chamber pulsed with soft blue light. At its center stood a structure, an altar, or maybe a machine. And floating above it, another vial. Just like the first, Eli stepped closer. The machine spoke again. "Bioweapon Prime, recognized." Query whispered, "What is this place?" Eli answered without thinking, "Home." And somewhere far across the galaxy, the Council's core AI received a final warning. The seal is broken. The weapon remembers. The ancient chamber was quiet, but Eli's heartbeat pounded in his ears. The floating vial spun slowly in the air above the glowing altar. Its liquid shimmered like stars trapped in water. As he stepped closer, he could feel the same heat crawling under his skin. Just like before, Query didn't move. Her eyes were wide. She scanned the walls, the floor, everything. The symbols were written in a language the galaxy had forgotten. But they weren't just symbols, they were instructions. Locked sequences. Triggers for something powerful. "This machine isn't broken," she whispered. "It's waiting." Eli placed his hand near the second vial. The machine lit up again. A voice spoke from the stone around them. Not in a language spoken aloud, but straight into their minds. "You are the last key, the prime strand. Do you accept reactivation?" The air grew heavy. Query shook her head. "Don't respond." "Not yet. We don't know what it means." "But..." Eli's hand was already glowing. He couldn't stop it. His blood responded. The ancient DNA in him accepted the call. The air around him rippled, and then the machine gave its answer. Confirmed. Reactivation sequence initiated. Weapon reconfiguration underway. Suddenly, pain hit him. Not sharp, but deep. Like something was opening inside him. His bones vibrated. His muscles burned. But he didn't scream. He stood still, eyes closed, as the chamber glowed brighter. Symbols lifted from the walls and wrapped around his skin like threads of light. Query grabbed his shoulder. "Eli, stop it. You don't know what it's doing to you." He looked at her, and his eyes were glowing blue. "I remember." "Remember?" "What?" she asked. He took a breath. "We weren't born on Earth. We were hidden there. But before that, we ruled the stars. Our DNA wasn't just sealed, it was chained. Buried under layers. The Council didn't just fear humans. They feared what we used to be. The machine began to show images holograms from the past. A race of tall beings with human features, glowing marks on their bodies, standing at the center of vast fleets. They didn't just fight wars, they ended them. Whole civilizations fell before them, not from weapons, from fear. Then the images changed. The same humans, betrayed, surrounded. The Galactic Council, younger then, voted in secret. A single plan. Erase their memories, change their biology, and scatter them on a planet no one would question. Earth, they used our kindness against us, Eli said. They knew, if we ever remembered, the balance of power would shatter. Query looked stunned. Then why now? Why did the DN unlock itself? Because something worse is coming, Eli said. And the galaxy needs us again. Before Query could answer, the chamber shook violently. The sky outside turned red. Ships appeared above the ruins, Council warships. They had tracked the DNA signal. The temple was no longer hidden. Eli turned to the altar. The vial melted into the machine. The light surged. The walls cracked open, revealing a spiral staircase leading deep underground. The machine's voice echoed again. Reactivate the source. Restore the line. Query pointed toward the ships above. They'll bomb this place. Ayla grabbed her arm. Then we go deeper. They ran down the staircase. The air below was cooler, but heavier. Every step took them further from the known galaxy. Stone gave way to metal. Walls turned to black alloy, humming with energy. It was like walking into the heart of a dead god. At the base, a door waited. Simple, clean, unmarked. Eli placed his hand on it. It opened silently. Inside was a sphere floating, spinning, alive. It pulsed with the same light as the DNA vials. And Eli knew what it was. The source, he whispered. Query frowned. What does it do? It finishes what was started, Eli said. It restores us. Before she could reply, another voice rang out behind them. Cold, firm, and cruel. Step away, human. They turned. A tall figure in golden armor stood in the doorway. Council elite, but this one wasn't like the others. His armor bore 10 glowing circles, one for each of the founding council species. He was their executioner. Their secret weapon. Eli stepped in front of Query. Too late. I've already reconnected. The elite drew his weapon. Then you die here, and the seal remains. But Eli didn't move. The source behind him pulsed once. The light flowed into his back, and something deep within him awoke. His veins turned silver. His hands glowed. And when the elite fired, the bolt stopped in midair. The weapon had remembered its purpose. Asterisk, the plasma bolt hung in the air, frozen between time and space. Query stared at it in shock, unable to speak. The Council elite's weapon hummed, still glowing with deadly power, but the shot didn't move an inch. It was like the room itself refused to obey physics anymore. Eli raised his hand slowly. The silver lines running through his veins brightened. He clenched his fingers, and the plasma dissolved like smoke. The elite stepped back, eyes wide behind his helmet. Even he hadn't seen anything like this. You're not supposed to be active, the elite growled. The seal should have held. For another 1,000 years. Ayla's voice was calm. The seal broke the moment your soldiers attacked. My DNA recognized war, it remembered. The elite raised his weapon again, this time aiming for the source. But before he could pull the trigger, Eli vanished, not vanished. Reappeared behind him like a blur. A flash of light followed. And the elite's weapon melted in his hands. The council's champion turned to strike, but Eli moved again, faster than sight. His palm hit the elite's chest, and a pulse of energy threw him across the chamber. He crashed against the wall. Armor dented, sparks flying. Query backed away from the center. Eli, what's happening to you? I'm not changing, he said, turning to her. I'm returning to what I was meant to be. The source pulsed once more. A beam of light connected with Eli's back. It didn't hurt. It filled him. Filled the gaps in his memory. In that instant, he remembered the name of his kind, the First Strand. They weren't just soldiers. They were creators, judges, protectors of balance. But their power had frightened the younger species. The Council betrayed them not out of hate, but fear. And to keep the galaxy safe, they buried the First Strand on Earth, rewrote their genes. Watched them through false myths and silent satellites. Eli turned to the elite, who tried to rise. Tell the Council, we are not their mistake, we are their shield. And now the shield is awake. Before the elite could answer, a blinding wave of energy burst from the source. It passed through Eli's body, through the walls, through the sky. It echoed across space. Not a sound, but a call. A signal sent far beyond the ruins, and many heard it. In distant parts of the galaxy, humans everywhere felt something stir. On mining colonies, on starships, in prisons, and even deep inside council cities, the forgotten fire in their blood sparked. Headaches turned into visions, muscles tensed. Instincts sharpened. Across thousands of systems, humanity was remembering. Query looked up at Eli. You just lit a beacon. I didn't, Eli said. The DNA did. It sent a message to the rest of us. The chamber shook again, this time from the outside. Council ships began to fire on the ruins. The mountain cracked, walls broke. The entrance above collapsed, but Eli didn't panic. He turned to the source. Can you protect her? The machine replied in his mind. Yes. Eli looked at Query. You have to go. I'll hold them off. She shook her head. You'll die. He gave her a soft smile. Not today. Today, they learn the seal is gone. A portal opened beside the source. It led to deep space, somewhere safe. Eli nodded, and Query stepped through it. The moment she vanished, the portal closed, and the room fell silent again. The elite groaned and stood. His face was visible now, old scars, alien rage. You'll bring chaos to the galaxy, Eli faced him. No, I'll bring truth. And then he stepped forward, his footsteps leaving trails of light. Outside, the Council prepared to erase the ruins from orbit. Dozens of warships locked their weapons, missiles armed. But as they fired, the air around the mountain cracked open. Wave of energy erupted from beneath the surface. It wasn't a weapon. It was a barrier, ancient, living, and tied to Eli's DNA. The missiles vanished into it like pebbles thrown into water, above the chaos. The Council commanders watched in silence. Their systems failed to read the energy. No frequency matched. No weapon type registered. One commander whispered what they all feared. He's not just awakened. He's become the source. The mountain was no longer a mountain. It had become a living force, a heart of ancient power beating across the stars. The golden armored council elite dropped to one knee as the weight of Eli's energy pressed down on him. His armor, once unbreakable, cracked under the pressure. Above them, council warships floated in silence. Their weapons were useless, their scanners broken, their captains confused. They had faced human rebellions before, but this was different. Eli stepped forward. His skin shimmered with silver light, and the glowing lines across his body pulsed like circuits, but it wasn't a machine inside him. It was DNA alive, aware, evolved. His voice rang out, not just in the chamber, but across the ships, across the galaxy. The First Strand has returned. You cannot erase what you did, but you can choose what happens next. In hidden corners of the galaxy, humans who had lived quiet lives began to change. On the prison world of Velax, a human prisoner touched the walls of his cell, and they cracked open. On the farm colonies of Avena, children cried out in unison, speaking a language their parents didn't know. And in the council capital itself, A janitor named Ryle fell to his knees, eyes glowing, whispering one word over and over: awakened. Panic spread among the council leaders. In a hidden chamber, 12 alien species debated in fear. They spoke in hushed tones about Protocol E emergency erasure. It was the final option. A full galactic strike against Earth and all known human settlements. They were never supposed to remember. One of them said, "We buried them for a reason." "But we buried them alive," another replied. "And now they rise." On the dark world, Eli faced the elite one last time. "Tell your council, if they come for Earth, they will face something they cannot control." The elite activated a recall beacon. "Then they will come, and they will burn your planet to ash." Alele didn't flinch. Earth is not alone. It never was. The first strand is everywhere. The beacon took the elite away in a flash of light. The moment he vanished, the ruins began to collapse. The source pulled its power inward, sealing itself once more. Not out of fear, but to prepare. Eli stepped out of the crumbling chamber and looked at the sky. Query waited for him in the stolen science ship. She had returned, even though he told her not to. She opened the ramp, tears in her eyes. "You said you'd hold them off, not become a legend." Eli smiled faintly. "A legend didn't save me." "You did." They left the surface, the mountain shrinking behind them. As they entered space, something strange happened. Human ships, small, old, unarmed, started to appear on scanners. Mining vessels, cargo freighters, deep space rescue crafts. All human. All answering a call they didn't understand, but felt deep in their blood. "They're gathering," Query whispered. "They don't even know why." "They don't need to," Eli said. "Their DNA does." But then the stars changed. A shadow moved across the systems. The Council fleet had begun its movement. Thousands of ships. War-class dreadnoughts. Erasers, kill teams. Heading not just toward Earth, but toward every human outpost. The final strike had begun. Query looked at him, terrified. "We can't fight all of that. Not with miners and traders." "No," Eli said, "but we don't have to." He tapped into the source's last gift, a signal buried in the stars. He sent a pulse, not through comms, but through the same strange frequency that had awoken him. And something ancient answered, beneath Mars, deep under the ice, inside Europa's hidden ocean. In the asteroid fields of the Sol system, machines older than Earth itself powered up. Dormant fleets, ships made of crystal and black metal. Engines that hadn't lit in a million years, but they were waiting for the first strand to rise again. Query gasped as scanners picked up the signals. "What are those?" Eli looked at the screen. "Our inheritance." And for the first time in 10,000 years, Earth was no longer defenseless. The Council's fleet poured across the galaxy like a black wave. Their commanders gave only one order: remove the human threat completely. No survivors, no records, no mercy. They thought Earth would beg. They thought humans would scatter. They were wrong. From the far edge of Sol system, the ancient fleets of the first strand awakened. Ships hidden beneath ice, buried under rock, and lost in space for ages now rose with glowing engines. They weren't built by humans. They were built for them. Their systems recognized Eli's signal as their command. Query sat in the pilot seat, watching the impossible happen. This changes everything." "It doesn't change who we are," Eli said quietly. "But it reminds them who we were." As the Council approached Earth, they were met not with resistance, but silence. No comms, no warnings. Just the blackness of space, until the first ancient ship decloaked. Then another, and another. Within seconds, dozens surrounded Earth's orbit, forming a defensive wall of living metal and crystal light. Council commanders screamed into their systems. Where did these come from? But their computers had no answers. These ships had no signatures, no blueprints. They were not of this era. They were from a time before records began. They weren't just ships. They were memories forged into machines. Eli stood in the command center of the lead vessel, a massive spear-shaped cruiser that hummed with warmth under his hands. "This is not a war," he said. "This is a warning." A message was sent to every species in the galaxy. It showed what the Council had hidden: the betrayal, the seal, the exile of the first strand. It showed the DNA locks, the cover-ups, the erasures. Billions watched in silence. And slowly, fear turned to shame. Some Council species pulled back their ships. Others surrendered mid-flight. Only the core leaders pressed forward. Their pride would not allow them to stop. They launched missiles, fired beams, sent all they had, and Earth's defenses opened. The ancient ships didn't fire like modern fleets. They used energy that bent reality. They erased enemy ships from existence, not destroyed them, but removed them from the timeline. In minutes, half the Council Armada was gone. The rest turned and fled. Query stared at the battlefield, her hands shaking. "We didn't fight for revenge. We fought for survival." "No," Ela said, watching the stars. "We fought for truth." News spread fast. Planets once under Council control declared independence. Humans across the galaxy rose up not with violence, but with understanding. Their true nature wasn't destruction. It was balance. The first strand had once maintained peace between worlds. Until that peace was taken from them. Now they would restore it. The Council collapsed within days. Its leaders either vanished or were captured by their own people. The Galactic Order didn't fall into chaos, it healed. The fear of humans was replaced by respect. Not because of the weapons, but because of what they chose not to do. Eli stood once more at the ancient temple where it all began. The source glowed faintly, its task complete. He placed the 2 DNA vials inside a new chamber, sealing them once more not to hide them, but to protect them. Query stood beside him. "So, what happens now?" Eli looked to the sky. "Now we live, as we were meant to. Not as weapons. As guides," she smiled. "The first strand returns." "No," Eli said, turning toward her. "The first strand never left. We just forgot." The wind carried his words into the ruins. The stars above pulsed softly. Somewhere deep in space, other hidden memories stirred. Other ancient humans began their own awakenings. Across the galaxy, the bioweapon once feared was no longer a threat. It was a promise dot, and from this day forward, the universe marked a new age, not ruled by fear, but by the children of Earth who remembered who they really were.